The cowboy did not ask why every face in Willow Creek turned cold when Evelyn Hart stepped off the stagecoach. He did not ask why the hotel owner dragged her suitcase back onto the muddy street. He only looked at the rain pouring over her thin coat and said 6 quiet words that almost broke the last strength she had left. "I've got a spare room, ma'am." The whole street seemed to stop breathing. The stagecoach had reached Willow Creek just before sunset, after 3 days of hard travel across the cold plains of northern Wyoming. Dark clouds covered the sky, and rain fell so heavily that the wooden buildings looked like shadows behind a gray curtain. Evelyn climbed down slowly, holding the side of the coach for balance. Her brown dress was wrinkled from the journey, and the hem was stained with mud. She carried one small suitcase, a sewing bag, and a folded letter that had already been opened and read too many times. The driver pulled his coat tighter around his shoulders. "This is Willow Creek," he said. "Road ends here until the bridge is repaired." Evelyn looked down the street. A blacksmith shop stood beside a feed store. Warm light shone through the windows of a small hotel called the Golden Pine. Smoke rose from stone chimneys, and horses crowded beneath the shelter beside the saloon. It was not much of a town, but it was far from Denver. That was all she wanted. She thanked the driver and stepped away from the coach. Before she could ask where to find the schoolhouse, the driver cracked the reins. The horses pulled forward, and the coach disappeared into the rain. Evelyn stood alone. She crossed the street toward the Golden Pine Hotel. Every step made water rise around her boots. When she entered, warmth touched her face, along with the smell of coffee, stew, and wet coats drying near the stove. About a dozen people sat inside. Their voices faded one by one. Evelyn tried not to notice. She placed her suitcase beside the front desk and approached the woman standing behind it. The woman was tall and heavy, with silver hair pulled into a tight knot. Her name, written on a small wooden sign, was Margaret Doyle. "I was told you might have a room," Evelyn said. Margaret looked her over slowly. "Name?" "Evelyn Hart." The moment the name left her mouth, a man near the stove turned in his chair. Another man lowered his cup. Margaret's eyes narrowed. "Evelyn Hart from Denver." Evelyn felt the cold return, even though she stood only a few feet from the fire. "Yes." Margaret reached beneath the desk and pulled out a folded newspaper. The paper was several weeks old. She opened it and placed it on the counter. Evelyn did not need to read the headline. She had seen it before. Schoolteacher accused of destroying prominent family. Her hands tightened at her sides. Margaret tapped the paper with one thick finger. "This you?" Evelyn lifted her eyes. "The story is not true." A low laugh came from the back of the room. Margaret folded the newspaper. Newspapers do not print things without reason. They printed what Mr. Lawson paid them to print. Another silence followed. Everyone in Denver knew the Lawson name. Samuel Lawson owned 3 banks, 2 rail companies, and enough land to make powerful men listen when he spoke. Evelyn had taught his 12-year-old daughter, Rose. She had also seen the bruises on the child's arms. When Evelyn reported what she believed was happening inside the Lawson house, Samuel had used his money and influence to turn the town against her. He claimed Evelyn had invented the story after he refused her demand for money. The school dismissed her. Her landlord forced her out. Even people who had known her for years crossed the street to avoid speaking to her. Rose was sent away before anyone could question her. Evelyn had left Denver with nothing but a suitcase and a letter offering her work at the Willow Creek school. Margaret pushed the newspaper aside. "You should leave." Evelyn stared at her. "The school board hired me." "The school board did not ask the mothers in this town." "I have done nothing wrong." Margaret came around the desk. "My sister has children here, so do half the families in this room. We do not need a woman with your reputation teaching them." Evelyn's face burned. "I only need a room for tonight. I can speak with the school board in the morning." "You will not stay here tonight." Margaret grabbed Evelyn's suitcase and carried it toward the door. Evelyn followed quickly. "Please, the coach is gone, and I do not know anyone here." Margaret opened the door and threw the suitcase onto the porch. It struck the wet boards, rolled down one step, and landed in the mud. Nobody spoke. Nobody stood. Evelyn looked around the room and saw only lowered eyes and hard faces. Some people seemed ashamed. Others seemed pleased. None of them came forward. Margaret pointed outside. "Take your troubles somewhere else." Evelyn walked into the rain. The door closed behind her. For several seconds, she stood beneath the narrow porch roof and stared at her suitcase lying in the street. Water ran down her hair and across her face. She could no longer tell whether she was crying. She stepped into the mud and bent to pick up the case. The leather handle tore loose. The suitcase fell open. Her clothes spilled into the water. A few people watched from behind the hotel window. Evelyn dropped to her knees and began gathering her things. Her hands shook so badly that she could hardly fold the wet fabric. A small framed photograph slipped from between two dresses and landed face down in the mud. She picked it up quickly. The photograph showed Evelyn standing beside Rose Lawson outside the schoolhouse. Rose was smiling. Evelyn remembered the day clearly. It had been the last time she had seen the girl before Samuel Lawson removed her from school. Evelyn wiped the glass with her sleeve. Boots stopped near her. She looked up. A cowboy stood in the rain beside a tall chestnut horse. He was broad-shouldered and quiet, with a dark coat hanging open over a gray shirt. Rain dripped from the edge of his hat. A short scar crossed his chin, and tired lines rested around his blue eyes. He had been standing outside the feed store when the hotel door opened. He had seen everything. Evelyn quickly placed the photograph inside her coat. "I do not need help," she said. The words came out sharper than she meant. The cowboy looked at the broken suitcase and the wet clothes in her arms. "Didn't say you did." He crouched and picked up a blue dress before the mud could ruin it. He folded it carefully and placed it back inside the case. Evelyn watched him. "You heard what they said." "I heard. And you still came over." He placed another dress inside. Rain doesn't care what folks say about a person. She did not know how to answer. The cowboy closed the suitcase and tied a length of rope around it where the leather straps had broken. Then he lifted it easily and carried it toward his horse. Evelyn stood. "Where are you taking that?" He secured it behind the saddle. "My ranch." Her heart began to pound. "I cannot go home with a stranger." The cowboy turned toward her. "Name is Caleb Monroe. Ranch is 3 miles west past Cedar Hill. My sister used to live there, but she married last spring. Her room's been empty since." Evelyn stayed beneath the rain, unsure whether to fear him or trust the calm in his voice. Caleb glanced toward the hotel window. Several faces quickly moved away from the glass. "You can sleep in the barn if the house makes you uneasy," he said, "but you'll freeze out here before morning." Evelyn looked down the empty road. The church was dark, the stores were closing. No stagecoach would return for days, and the rain had already become colder. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Caleb held her gaze. "Because somebody should have." The words reached a place inside her that she had kept locked for months. Evelyn lowered her face. Her shoulders shook once. Then again. She pressed one hand against her mouth, fighting the cry rising from her chest. She had not cried when the school dismissed her. She had not cried when her landlord placed her belongings on the sidewalk. She had not cried when the Denver paper called her a liar. But now, in a strange town beneath pouring rain, one man had treated her with simple kindness. It nearly broke her. Caleb looked away, giving her the small mercy of privacy. After a moment, he held out his hand. Evelyn placed her cold fingers in his palm. He helped her onto the horse, then climbed into the saddle in front of her. She held the back of the saddle at first, careful not to touch him. They rode west as darkness settled across the land. Willow Creek disappeared behind them. The road passed through open grassland and low pine-covered hills. Rain struck Evelyn's face, but Caleb's coat blocked most of the wind. He rode slowly so the horse would not slip in the mud. Neither of them spoke for several miles. At last, a lantern appeared ahead. Monroe Ranch stood in a wide valley beneath the hills. The house was made of dark timber with a stone chimney and a long porch. A barn sat nearby, and cattle moved like shadows behind the fence. Caleb helped Evelyn down. A young girl opened the front door before they reached the porch. She was perhaps 10 years old, with red hair and a wool blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "Pa." Caleb stopped. The girl looked at Evelyn with open curiosity. "This is Miss Hart," Caleb said. "She'll use Aunt Lucy's room tonight." The girl nodded, but her eyes remained fixed on Evelyn's wet clothes. Then she asked the question Caleb had not asked. "Is she the lady everyone says hurt that little girl in Denver?" Evelyn froze. Caleb turned slowly toward his daughter. The rain struck the porch roof above them. Before he could answer, Evelyn reached inside her coat and felt the muddy photograph hidden there. She had believed the worst part of her past was behind her. She was wrong. Caleb did not answer his daughter at once. He stepped onto the porch and removed his hat. Rain ran from his coat and formed a dark pool around his boots. The girl watched him closely, waiting. "Emma," he said, "people repeat many things they do not understand." Emma looked at Evelyn. But Mrs. Doyle said she lied about a child. Evelyn felt the old shame rise inside her again. She had heard those same words in Denver, at the train station, inside boarding houses, and from strangers who had never met her. Caleb opened the door wider. "Miss Hart is cold, bring her a towel." Emma hesitated, then went inside. Evelyn remained near the porch steps. "I should leave." Caleb looked toward the dark road. "Where?" "I can find the church." "It is locked." "The barn will be enough." "You are already here." His voice was quiet, but it carried the steady weight of a man who had made up his mind. Emma returned holding a towel. She gave it to Evelyn without smiling. Inside, the house was warm and simple. A fire burned in the stone fireplace. A pot of beans sat on the stove, and fresh bread rested beneath a cloth on the table. A pair of small boots stood near the door beside Caleb's worn work boots. Evelyn dried her face and hair. Caleb carried her suitcase down a short hallway and opened a door near the back of the house. The room held a narrow bed, a wooden dresser, and a small window looking toward the barn. A faded quilt covered the bed. "My sister left some dresses in the chest," he said. "You can use one until yours dry." Evelyn touched the wet sleeve of her dress. "I will pay you." "No need. I do not take charity." Caleb set the suitcase beside the dresser. "Then help Emma with her reading tomorrow." Evelyn looked at him. "You want me to teach your daughter?" "I want her to finish one book without throwing it at the wall." From the kitchen, Emma called, "I heard that." For the first time that day, a faint smile touched Evelyn's face. Caleb noticed but said nothing. At supper, Emma sat across from Evelyn and watched her between every bite. Caleb ate slowly, keeping his eyes on his plate. After several quiet minutes, Emma spoke. "Did you know the girl?" "Yes," Evelyn answered. "Was she bad?" "No." "Did you hurt her?" Caleb set down his spoon. "Emma." Evelyn lifted one hand. "It is all right." She looked at the child. "I tried to help her." "Then why does everyone say you hurt her?" "Because her father was powerful and I was not." Emma thought about that. "My pa says powerful men are often the most afraid of truth." Caleb glanced at his daughter. "I said that once." "You say it every time Mr. Wade comes asking about the North Field." A small silence passed. Evelyn noticed Caleb's expression change at the name. "Who is Mr. Wade?" she asked. Caleb tore a piece of bread. "The richest rancher in the county. And he wants your land. He wants the spring that runs through it." Emma leaned closer. "He says the water belongs to him." Caleb gave her a look. "Finish your supper." Later, Evelyn changed into one of Lucy's old dresses. It was plain and slightly too large, but it was warm. She hung her wet clothes near the stove and sat with Emma at the table. The girl opened a reading book but kept glancing toward Evelyn. "You are really a teacher." "I was." Pa says a person does not stop being something just because another person takes away the name. Evelyn looked toward Caleb, who was repairing a saddle strap near the fire. He kept his eyes on his work. Emma began reading. She struggled with several words, becoming angry each time she made a mistake. Evelyn did not correct her quickly. She waited until Emma tried again, then helped her sound out each word. After half an hour, Emma read an entire page without stopping. Her face brightened. "I did it." "You did." Caleb looked up from the saddle strap. "First time in 2 months." Emma closed the book proudly. That night, Evelyn lay awake listening to rain strike the roof. The bed was soft, the room was warm, and nobody had told her to keep her suitcase packed. That should have brought peace. Instead, it frightened her. Kindness had become dangerous. Every time she trusted someone, they eventually heard the rumors. Then their faces changed. Their voices became colder. Doors closed. Evelyn rose quietly and opened her suitcase. She took out the photograph of Rose and cleaned the mud from the glass. Behind the picture was a folded note written in a child's hand. "Miss Hart, if you tell, he will send me away." Evelyn had found the note inside Rose's schoolbook. It was the only proof she had. Before she could show it to the authorities, Samuel Lawson accused her of trying to steal money from him. The newspaper printed his story. Rose disappeared from Denver the same night. Evelyn placed the note back behind the photograph. A floorboard creaked outside her room. She quickly closed the frame. Caleb stood in the hallway holding a lantern. "Everything all right?" "Yes." His eyes moved toward the photograph. "You do not need to hide things in this house." Evelyn held the frame against her chest. "You say that now." Caleb leaned against the doorframe. "My wife died 4 years ago." The words surprised her. He looked toward the room where Emma slept. "Fever took her in less than a week. After that, people came with advice. Some said I should send Emma to live with my sister. Others said a man could not raise a girl alone." "But you kept her." "She was my daughter." His voice became softer. "People can talk until their mouths go dry. It does not make them right." Evelyn lowered her eyes. Sometimes they have enough power to make their lies become the truth. Caleb studied her. Only if everyone is too afraid to stand against them. Before Evelyn could answer, a horse cried out from the barn. Caleb turned at once. Another frightened sound followed. He handed Evelyn the lantern. "Stay inside." He grabbed his coat and stepped into the rain. Evelyn watched through the window as he ran toward the barn. Lightning flashed over the fields, showing the fences and hills for one bright second. Then she saw something else. A rider near the north pasture. The figure turned and disappeared behind the trees. Evelyn opened the door. "Caleb." He was already inside the barn. She pulled on her boots and followed. The smell of smoke reached her before she crossed the yard. Flames climbed the side of the hay shed behind the barn. Caleb dragged open the barn doors and began leading the horses outside. Evelyn ran toward the stalls and found Emma's pony kicking wildly against the gate. She covered the animal's eyes with a blanket and pulled it forward. Smoke filled the air. Caleb shouted from the far side of the barn. "Get back!" A burning beam fell behind them. Evelyn led the pony into the rain, just as flames spread across the roof of the shed. Emma stood on the porch screaming for her father. Caleb emerged from the barn with the final horse. His face was black with smoke, and blood ran from a cut above his eye. The rain slowed the fire, but it could not stop it. By midnight, the hay shed had collapsed into a smoking pile. Caleb stood in the mud staring at the damage. "This was not lightning," he said. Evelyn remembered the rider. "I saw someone near the north fence." He turned toward her. "Which way did he go?" toward Cedar Hill. Caleb's jaw tightened. Emma ran across the yard and wrapped her arms around him. Was it Mr. Wade? Caleb looked toward the dark hills but did not answer. The next morning, Sheriff Owen Briggs arrived with 2 men from town. He walked around the ruins and found a broken bottle near the fence. The cloth inside it still smelled of lamp oil. Somebody wanted this place to burn, the sheriff said. Caleb folded his arms. You know who? Sheriff Briggs looked uneasy. Knowing and proving are different things. A horse approached from the road. The rider wore a clean black coat and a pale hat. He was in his late 40s, with silver at his temples and a smile that never reached his eyes. Caleb stepped away from the ruins. Silas Wade. Wade dismounted slowly. Terrible thing, he said. Fire can destroy a man's future in one night. His gaze moved toward Evelyn. So this is the Denver woman. Caleb stood between them. She has a name. I know her name, everyone does. Evelyn felt Emma's hand slip into hers. Wade smiled. I came to offer help. Sell me the north pasture, Caleb. I will give you enough money to rebuild the shed and buy winter feed. The pasture is not for sale. Wade looked at the burned wood. Winter is coming. Pride does not feed cattle. He turned to leave, then paused beside Evelyn. You should be careful, Miss Hart. Bad things seem to happen wherever you go. Caleb moved toward him, but Evelyn caught his arm. Wade mounted his horse and rode away. Sheriff Briggs watched him go. He wants you frightened, he said. Caleb looked at the ruined shed. He failed. But that evening, a letter arrived from Willow Creek. The school board had canceled Evelyn's position. The letter said parents had protested her hiring and threatened to remove their children from the school. Evelyn read it twice beside the fireplace. Then she folded it carefully and placed it on the table. Caleb stood near the window. You can stay here. For how long? As long as you need. She shook her head. First your shed burns, now the school refuses me. Wade will use my name against you. He already tried. And he will keep trying. Caleb faced her. Let him. Evelyn's voice broke. You do not understand what men like him can do. Caleb crossed the room slowly. I understand that you ran from Denver because nobody stood beside you. He stopped in front of her. You will not have to run from here. Evelyn looked up at him. She wanted to believe him more than she had wanted anything in years. Before she could speak, someone knocked hard against the front door. Caleb opened it. A young stable boy stood outside, breathing heavily. He held a wet envelope in one hand. This came on the evening stage, the boy said. The driver said it was urgent. The envelope was addressed to Evelyn. The handwriting belonged to Rose Lawson. Evelyn tore it open. Only one line was written inside. Miss Hart, my father knows where you are, and he is coming to Willow Creek. Evelyn read the line again. Miss Hart, my father knows where you are, and he is coming to Willow Creek. Her hands began to shake. Caleb took the letter gently and read it. His face changed as his eyes moved across the page. When was this sent? He asked. There is no date. The stable boy stood near the open door, dripping rain onto the floor. The stage driver said another coach is coming from Denver tomorrow afternoon. Evelyn closed her eyes. Samuel Lawson had found her. Caleb thanked the boy and shut the door. Emma stood beside the table, watching Evelyn with frightened eyes. Is that the powerful man? She asked. Evelyn nodded. Emma took her hand. Caleb walked to the window and looked toward the dark road. He cannot hurt you here. You do not know him, Evelyn said. He does not need to use his own hands. He buys people. He frightens them. He tells one lie until everyone believes it. Caleb turned. Then this time, he will meet someone who does not frighten easily. Evelyn looked at the burned shed outside. You have already lost enough because of me. The fire was Wade's doing. And Wade may be working with Lawson. The thought settled heavily inside the room. Silas Wade had known too much about her past. He had spoken as if he expected trouble to follow her. Perhaps Samuel Lawson had written to him before arriving. Caleb reached for his coat. "I am going to town." "You cannot fight them." "I am not going to fight." He looked at the letter again. "I am going to find out who delivered this." Caleb rode into Willow Creek before sunrise. Evelyn remained at the ranch with Emma. She tried to continue their reading lesson, but every sound from the road made her lift her head. Near noon, Caleb returned with Sheriff Briggs. The sheriff carried a second letter. "This was given to Reverend Parker last night," he said. "It is from the girl." Evelyn opened it carefully. "Miss Hart father sent me to live with Aunt Beatrice in Kansas City. I told her what happened. She believed me. Father is coming to make you sign a paper saying you lied. Please do not sign it. I am coming with Aunt Beatrice." Hope rose inside Evelyn, but fear followed it. "When will they arrive?" she asked. "The afternoon stage," Sheriff Briggs said. Caleb looked toward the road. "The same stage Lawson is taking." Sheriff Briggs nodded. "If the girl speaks in front of witnesses, Lawson's story will fall apart." "Unless he stops her first," Evelyn said. The sheriff's face became serious. "I will meet the coach outside town." Caleb reached for his rifle, but the sheriff lifted a hand. "No weapons unless we need them. We do this by law." Caleb left the rifle beside the door. They rode toward Willow Creek together. Evelyn wanted to remain behind, but she knew she could not hide again. Emma stayed at the ranch with Caleb's neighbor, Mrs. Carter. By afternoon, half the town had gathered near the stage stop. News of Samuel Lawson's arrival had spread quickly. Margaret Doyle stood on the hotel porch. Silas Wade waited beside his horse near the feed store. When he saw Evelyn riding beside Caleb, his smile disappeared. The stagecoach appeared beyond the eastern hill. It moved quickly down the wet road, wheels throwing mud behind it. Sheriff Briggs stepped into the street and raised one hand. The driver pulled the horses to a stop. The door opened. Samuel Lawson stepped down first. He was a tall man with gray hair, a fine black coat, and polished boots that had never known honest work. He looked around Willow Creek as if he already owned it. Then he saw Evelyn. His expression hardened. "You should have stayed gone," he said. Caleb moved closer to her. Lawson looked him over. "And you must be the cowboy who took her in." "My name is Caleb Monroe." "I did not ask." Lawson reached into his coat and removed a folded document. He held it toward Evelyn. "This ends today. Sign this statement. Admit that you invented the charges against me, and I will allow you to leave Wyoming without further trouble." Evelyn stared at the paper. "What happens if I refuse?" Lawson smiled. "The school will never hire you. No hotel will take you. No decent family will let you near their children." Several townspeople lowered their eyes. Lawson stepped closer. "You know what I can do." Caleb placed himself between them. "She is not signing anything." Lawson looked past him toward Silas Wade. "You promised me this would be handled." The street became silent. Wade's face went pale. Caleb turned slowly. "You burned my shed for him." Wade reached for his horse. Sheriff Briggs blocked his path. "Stay where you are." Lawson's confidence began to weaken. Then the stagecoach door opened again. A woman in a dark green dress stepped down. She was followed by a thin girl with brown hair and a pale face. Evelyn stopped breathing. "Rose." The girl saw her and ran. Evelyn dropped to her knees as Rose threw her arms around her neck. For a moment, neither of them could speak. Samuel Lawson's face twisted with anger. "You were told to stay in Kansas City." The woman in green stepped between him and the girl. "I am Beatrice Cole," she said, "Rose's aunt." She held up a leather journal. "My niece told me everything. She also showed me this." Lawson stared at the journal. Beatrice opened it. Rose wrote down every time you struck her, every threat, every bruise. She wrote the dates and the names of people who were present. Rose stood beside Evelyn, holding her hand tightly. Sheriff Briggs took the journal. "Mr. Lawson, you will come with me." Lawson laughed once. "You think a small-town sheriff can arrest me? I think a man who threatens a child and destroys evidence can answer questions in front of a judge." Wade suddenly mounted his horse. Caleb grabbed the reins before he could ride away. The horse reared, but Caleb held firm. Wade struck him across the face. Caleb pulled him from the saddle, and both men fell into the mud. Sheriff Briggs rushed forward with his deputy. Together they forced Wade to the ground. A small bottle fell from Wade's coat. It smelled of lamp oil. The sheriff looked at the burned cloth tied around its neck. "This looks like what we found near Monroe's shed." Wade stopped fighting. Samuel Lawson looked around the street for support. Nobody moved toward him. Margaret Doyle stepped down from the hotel porch. Her face was filled with shame. "You told me she was dangerous," she said. Lawson ignored her. He pointed at Evelyn. "She brought this on herself." Rose stepped forward. "No, father, you did." The girl's voice was quiet, but the words carried across the street. Lawson's face changed. For the first time, Evelyn saw fear in his eyes. Sheriff Briggs placed him under arrest. The crowd watched as Lawson and Wade were taken toward the jail. No one cheered. The truth did not feel like victory. It felt heavy and sad. Too many people had suffered before anyone chose to listen. Rose stayed with Evelyn until evening. She would return to Kansas City with Aunt Beatrice after giving her statement to the judge. Before leaving, she hugged Evelyn again. "I thought you forgot me," Rose whispered. "Never. You were the only person who tried to help." Evelyn touched the girl's hair. "You were brave enough to tell the truth." Rose smiled through her tears. "So were you." The next morning, Willow Creek School Board asked Evelyn to meet them inside the church. Every seat was filled. The board chairman stood near the front. "Miss Hart, we judged you before hearing your side. We canceled your position because we were afraid of gossip." Evelyn looked around the room. Some faces were kind now, others were ashamed. "We would like you to become Willow Creek's teacher," he said. Evelyn remained silent for a moment. Then she looked at the children sitting beside their parents. "I will accept," she said, "but only if every child is taught that a powerful person's word is not worth more than the truth." The chairman nodded. "That is fair." Margaret Doyle approached her after the meeting. "I was cruel to you," she said. "I believed the newspaper because it was easier than asking questions." Evelyn waited. Margaret lowered her eyes. "I am sorry." Evelyn did not forgive her quickly. Some wounds needed time, but she nodded once. It was a beginning. Weeks passed. Silas Wade confessed that Lawson had paid him to frighten Evelyn away and promised him money to buy Caleb's land. Wade was charged for burning the shed. Samuel Lawson was sent back to Colorado to face the claims against him. Evelyn began teaching in Willow Creek. Each morning, Caleb drove her into town before working the ranch. Each afternoon, Emma waited outside the schoolhouse so they could ride home together. The spare room remained hers. At first, her suitcase stayed packed beneath the bed. Then one evening, Caleb noticed it was empty. Evelyn's dresses hung inside the wardrobe. Her medicine books sat on the shelf. Rose's photograph stood beside the lamp. Caleb stopped in the doorway. "Looks like you unpacked." Evelyn folded a blanket. It seemed foolish to keep everything inside a suitcase. He nodded, but a quiet smile touched his face. Winter came early that year. One night, snow began falling over Monroe Ranch. Emma slept near the fire with a book open across her chest. Evelyn stood on the porch beside Caleb. The valley was white and still. "I never thanked you properly," she said. "For what?" "The spare room." Caleb looked through the window toward the warm house. It has not been spare for a long time. Evelyn felt tears fill her eyes. This time she did not hide them. Caleb reached for her hand. "I cannot promise people will never talk," he said. "I cannot promise life will be easy." "I do not need easy." "What do you need?" Evelyn looked at him. "A place where I am not expected to run." Caleb held her hand more tightly. "Then stay." She smiled. "I already did." The following spring, Caleb built a second classroom beside the schoolhouse because there were too many children for one room. Emma helped paint the door. Rose sent letters from Kansas City and wrote that she hoped to become a teacher one day. Evelyn kept every letter. On a warm evening in June, she married Caleb beneath the cottonwood tree behind the ranch house. Emma stood between them, holding a small bunch of wildflowers. The people of Willow Creek came. Margaret brought bread. Sheriff Briggs brought a new school bell. Even those who had once turned away stood quietly beneath the trees. Evelyn did not forget what they had done. But she also did not let their past cruelty steal her future. Years later, people still told the story of the rainy evening when a shamed woman was thrown from the hotel, and a quiet cowboy offered her a room. Most remembered the arrest, the hidden journal, and the truth that brought down a powerful man. But Evelyn remembered something smaller. She remembered kneeling in the mud while her life fell from a broken suitcase. She remembered Caleb folding her wet dress without asking what she had done. She remembered 6 simple words. "I've got a spare room, ma'am." Those words did not rescue her from every hardship. They did something greater. They gave her a door that stayed open long enough for her to believe she deserved a home.